Hi, I'm Brooke Gleichowski, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Beam Boldly. As an NCAA Division I gymnast, I know firsthand what it feels like to carry the weight of performance, expectations, and identity. Here, we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about mental health, performance anxiety, NIL, resilience, and of course, how faith is our foundation that carries us through all of that. Whether it's stepping onto the beam in competition or just stepping out in everyday life, we are called to live boldly, and we're called to let our light shine. The name Beam Boldly was inspired by the verse Matthew 5:16, which says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." To me, that's what this podcast is all about. So if you're ready to hear raw conversations, find strength in faith, and be reminded that you're never walking this journey by yourself, join me as we step boldly into everyday life. Hey you guys, welcome back to Beam Boldly. Today we have the 2004 all-around Olympic gold medalist and a member of the USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame, Miss Carly Patterson. Welcome, Carly.
Thank you, Brooke. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yes, this conversation I've been waiting for a couple months now.
Yeah.
I actually got connected with Carly through my coach here at UGA, Cecile. So shout out to you, Cecile. Super grateful for this connection, and I'm really excited to see what God is going to do through our conversation. So yeah, I would love to just get started, Carly, by asking you how you got started in gymnastics.
Yeah, I got started in gymnastics just through my cousin's birthday party that she had at a gym. Like a lot of kids probably have gotten started and found what gymnastics was. And so I just loved it from that moment on, and that passion and probably I should say obsession started, right at that birthday party. It just was this new love, and I was like, what is this? This is the most amazing thing. How can I get here every single day? And just begged my parents for the next couple months after that birthday party to put me in the sport. And then finally they did, just after trying to start teaching myself back bends and all the things at home and in the grass and off the couch, and finally got started, and then it would just took off from there. Escalated quickly.
That's awesome. Yeah. So how did you get thrown into like the elite space after that?
So, obviously things were different back in
Right.
94-ish when I got started. But like I said, things escalated and moved really quickly once I got started. And it was, starting that one class a week. And then it was all of a sudden, you're going 3 times a week, and then you're going every single afternoon. And then I was going 2 a day. So then I was just there all day, every day, schooling in the middle of workouts, practice on Saturdays. So I was there, 40 hours a week before I knew it, and just really kind of started moving up quickly through the levels. I was level 10 at 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first level 10 season, which was pretty crazy and pretty quick from starting at 6 years old to then being 10 and, getting to level 10.
That's incredible.
And I say that as like I was not great at level 10, being 10 years old. There was still a lot of refining that needed to be done, a lot of technique and form and all kinds of things. But I just loved doing gymnastics. And so, like I said, I think just moving through those levels quickly and working really hard and loving what I did and knowing that that's where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, it was just kind of easy to move through those levels. And before I knew it, I was testing the elite level at 11.
Wow, that's so cool. So then you did elite from what, 11 until at least 16, right?
Yeah.
At the Olympics. So
Yes.
what were those years like? Just in like a short description.
Yeah. So my dad's job, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana originally, and my dad's job transferred our family from Baton Rouge to Houston when I was 11. And so that was the year that I went up to the elite level, made junior national team, started competing at that elite level. And then we were only in Houston for a year. So that was a short time, but there was a lot of improvement that happened during that year, a lot of growth. And then my dad's job transferred us again like in a year. So then I was 12. It was 2000, I believe. And that's how we ended up in Dallas. And at that point, already being the elite level, we had already known that at least in Dallas, there was a good gym that we could
Mhm.
call and see if they had a spot that, I could hop on a team. And luckily, my coach, Evgeny, actually answered the phone the day that my parents called and they were like, "Hey, my daughter's name's Carly Patterson. She's a junior elite. We're moving to Dallas for my husband's job and we're needing a gym." And Evgeny had heard of me and kind of, I guess, seen me a little bit at
Mhm.
some competitions. And he was like, "I'll take her. I'll take her on my team." And
Oh,
so, like that right there, when I think about that and look back on that moment being such a God moment in my story, because Evgeny answered the phone that day. Like he
yeah.
should have been out on the floor coaching,
Right.
He doesn't answer
So
the phone.
random.
But to answer the phone the day that my mom calls, for him to know who I was and to say, "I want to take her on my team," like that's a pretty crazy God moment right there
Wow.
for sure for me.
Yeah, and you had from what I saw, you had a really good relationship with that coach, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's also really special, especially in the time that you were in USA Gymnastics. So, would you,
Yeah.
like, tell me a little bit about that coaching dynamic and how your relationship was healthy and strong, coach to athlete?
Yes, I am so lucky and blessed to have the story and career and relationship with my coach that I did, and I know that all of my teammates would say the same thing. We have a like a Woga Sisters group text that we talk all the time, and we do like a yearly girls trip and get together and talk about the good old
That's
days and
awesome.
laugh and reminisce. But we've talked about this together too before, just how both of our coaches, Evgeny and Natasha, they were so amazing because we really had a good relationship and connection with them. And I think that that's why they have been so successful. They were so successful, back then and continue to be, because they they do it the right way. They knew exactly how to coach each one of us gymnasts according to our abilities, our talents, and they knew how to get us to be the best that we could personally be, like our personal best. And that takes real skill, leadership, that takes really knowing your craft and what you do to be able to do that for multiple gymnasts and not just coach, a team all the same way. They're
Right.
really able to take your strengths, your weaknesses, and they're able to help bring you to your peak and your best. And so, like I said, truly blessed with just having such amazing coaches that knew how to help me get to, my highest potential. They were very open. We were, very honest. We were just very close. We would do things together. He would take us out to dinner. They would host us at their house. They had like a sauna. So we would do some sauna and like
Yeah.
recovery and drink tea together. And like we would just talk. They still knew that we were young women that were going through all different kinds of things in our life, but they just built that relationship with us. And I think that's where the closeness and the connection and the success comes from, because we knew that they truly cared about us. They truly cared about our well-being. Anytime you're trying to be a high level collegiate athlete, an Olympic athlete, a professional athlete, you're going to have hard days. You're going to
For
have your
sure.
coaches kick your butt sometimes, in a sense, And so it's like those days are to push you. And I'm grateful for the days they had to be a little harder on me, because I would have never reached my full potential. I would have never achieve the things that I achieved if they let me stay in a certain attitude that day, or if they let me
Mhm.
work or train how I wanted to or felt like that day, if that makes sense. Sometimes we have to have those people in our lives that can push us beyond where we maybe think that we could go that day or that moment or that season. And so I'm so thankful that they knew how to push us in a respectful way. And like I said, just bring us to our highest potential.
Yeah, I love that, and I also really love how a lot of the things you mentioned are traits of the kind of relationship that you would have with the Lord too. You talked about, like,
Yes.
open communication, you talked about honesty,
you talked about even the discipline aspect of it, of like sometimes God's going to put something really tough in front of you to bring you deeper, to draw
Yep.
you closer to him.
Yep.
And I don't even know if your coaches were believers or anything of that nature, but for any coach that's listening to this, it's so good to hear that you can coach with these things in mind, with the hospitality, of welcoming the
Yeah.
girls. Of course, now there are boundaries around that, but these are all traits that we are called to as believers. And it's really cool that that was displayed through your coach athlete relationship.
That's so true. Perfect correlation, Brooke.
Now, I would love to dive into the faith aspect a little bit. I want to hear how you grew up in faith and then a little bit about your faith throughout your gymnastics career.
Yeah. So once again, really blessed in the fact that my parents growing up raised me with a solid faith foundation of, knowing who Jesus was and just really building my relationship and getting that relationship started with God at an early age. We were in church a lot. My dad sang worship in church most Sundays. My parents were in Bible studies. So I remember going over to people's houses and, while they did Bible studies and playing with the other kids. And so just from a really early age, I knew who God was. I had established that relationship with him. And as I got older, after we moved to Dallas, I would say it changed a little bit because my parents got divorced. And so our life changed after that and just looked a little bit differently. And so I think for a little while, gymnastics definitely became the main priority.
The number one. Yeah.
The number one, yeah. And God was kind of, I say at that time, like on the back burner. Like I always knew he was there and I still prayed, but I was not, we weren't really in church consistently anymore. And we were just kind of in this season where, like I said, he was just kind of on the back burner of life. But I always knew he was there. And like I said, I still prayed. I just wasn't pursuing this deep relationship with him and at a time where I like probably needed it most too.
Right.
But I think at the same time, I look back at it now because after those years and that season, my faith had to become my own because at first it was my parents' faith, right? It was kind of what they had taught me, what they had told me, what I had learned in Sunday school or in church and whatever. But at the same time, like I think there are these moments in all of our lives. And I realize even like for my own kids' life where we teach them about the Bible, we go to church, we, are building this faith foundation for them as well. But at some point, we all have to make it our own. And we all have that
Right.
moment where we have to choose for ourselves. And so it wasn't until a little bit later that I really came back to my faith and realized like, I need you, God. Like, I need you
Right.
in everything. Like, you need to be the priority. And then everything else falls under that. At that time, where, like I said, where I really probably needed him some of the most, crucial times at the same juncture, I'm grateful for that moment of like knowing that I needed to turn around and go back to him and knowing that like, okay, I'm ready to choose him for myself. I'm ready to know what this faith walk for myself looks like and really start exploring that and getting into that. And so I'd say that's when my faith really changed and grew. And, when I met my husband, we, got married and we decided like we knew we wanted to find a church home. We knew we wanted to raise our kids in church and knowing God. And so we just really started pursuing that little by little. And our faith has just grown and grown and grown tremendously in the last we've been married for 13 years. So it has really grown through so many. I mean, like we would need a much longer podcast for all of this, but like there's so many seasons and trials and ups and downs in just the last 13 years alone since being married. But it's wonderful to look back on where we used to be and where I used to be and to see how far I've come and the different ways that God has worked my story and weaved it together for his good and for his glory, just like the Bible says. And so I love looking back now. And like I said, although I would have loved to have this stronger faith after I won the Olympics, I would have loved to have been so much bolder and proclaiming, who my Lord and Savior is. But at the same time, I look back now and I'm like, wow, like God has carried me through so much. God has grown me so much through all these different things. And I can look back and see his hand all over it. And so I think that's sometimes when we get removed from these seasons and we start a new season, we're able to look back and see the growth and what he did in our lives. It's so powerful.
Yeah. I love how you're saying all of that, not from a place of like regret or shame or guilt, that you hadn't
Yeah.
taken ownership earlier, but instead of a place that's of gratitude for what has now happened. All of that is a testament to God doing everything in his timing, right? Because even though, yeah, at the time that you were at the Olympics, you may not have taken your faith to be your own yet, but now since then, so many incredible things have happened that we wouldn't even have enough time to talk about it on this podcast, and, like,
Right.
that is something to praise God for alone. I would love to know, like, what do you think your gymnastics career would have looked like if you had taken ownership sooner? Not that we wish that would have happened because, again, your story is perfectly written by God, but what do you think that would have changed gymnastics-wise?
I think it probably would have just given me a little more strength in getting through those extra hard days or injury or when things weren't going my way or looking the way I wanted them to go, or even like when my parents got divorced. Instead of putting my frustrations, my sadness, my, whatever towards God, I put it into gymnastics, which
Right.
was a good outlet too. But, like I could have leaned on him through so many more trials and so many more things. And like I said, like after winning the Olympics, I would have had such a platform to just be so bold. And it's funny because people always ask me, there's a part that was in the broadcast right before my floor routine, which was the last event. I knew the exact score I needed to get to win the gold. And they've got the camera just on my face. And I'm just like, blah, 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 like, and I know what I'm saying. I'm, people always ask me, what were you saying to yourself in that moment? I was like, I'm
Yeah.
praying. I was praying to God to like
Wow.
help me and calm me and help my hard work show through. And so it's like, I knew in those moments to lean on him. But like at the same time, it wasn't like, okay, I won. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus, like going crazy. And so I think just with my platform and the opportunities I got to do afterwards, it would have been nice to be able to be, like I said, more bold. But at the same time, as you caught on to it, I can look back and be so grateful for the way he's worked it all out. And now more than ever, I find myself being more and more bold and wanting to be and feeling that just that conviction and nudge from God to be and to just really share my faith and what he means to me, what he's done in my life, and how he's gotten me through all these years. And so I'm doing it now and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for every opportunity to talk about him. I do motivational speaking for, my career these days, but I am always asking God for the right opportunities. Like, I don't want to just be on a stage and speaking to an audience. Like, I want to be on the right stage, the stage that he has prepared for me. I want the people in the audience that need to hear my story or need to hear what I have to say or need to hear about my faith. And so those are the rooms I want to be in and the people I want to be in front of to bring him glory. And I just pray for any other opportunity that's not for me, that's not from him, like, God, shut that door. Like, open only the doors that you have for me. That's all I want. I just want your will.
Mhm.
And help me submit to that too, because, we're all human and we can have a hard time trusting God's timing or waiting on God's timing. And so sometimes, you could think, oh, my career could look this way, or I wish it was moving faster. Or I wish I was on more stages, or my career looked like that person, where you start comparing, you start questioning, you start like, saying, hey, like what's the deal here? But waiting on God's timing and continuing to submit my will and make it what he wants for my life is so much better. And, but we're human. We have to remind ourselves of that sometimes.
So true. And our human nature is to just want the next best thing all the time. And waiting is actually so, so, so hard. I was actually in a college ministry service last night. The whole message was about waiting and
Oh,
just
wow.
how, like, the waiting never stops. Like, at all moments in your life, you're waiting,
Yeah.
We're waiting for the next opportunity. You're waiting to get married. You're waiting to then buy a house. Then you're waiting to have kids. Like you're
Yeah.
always in a season of waiting, and that exposes a lot in you because the longer the waiting season is, the easier it is to get tempted to believe that God's not as good as he says he is. But those are the times where we also can be drawn deeper, and just relating back to your story of only wanting what God wants and being like, "Give me the audience, the biggest audience. Give me the stage that's the biggest, the lights that are the brightest." And being like, "No, God, if you want me in a high school cafeteria speaking, like,
Right.
put me there
Yeah.
instead."
Yep.
And I think
That's right.
that is just huge, and especially relating back to athletics, a lot of times we're like, "Put me on the Olympic stage, put me on the NCAA championship stage," which, of course, you should totally strive for those things, like, go for your goals, I'm not saying that at all, but there's also a level of, like, surrender and, like, hand opening of just giving control to him and being like, "God, put me where you want me. If you want me on the sidelines for this meet, so be it. If you want me in all 4 lineups, so be it," you know? And it's so easy to get away from that, but especially because that's just not the culture of sports that we live in at
Yeah.
all.
When I think too, like we're in such a fast moving society as well. Like even when we get the things that we prayed for or that we're in that season that we want to be in, and sometimes instead of enjoying it, I found that like we can just already start to think about rushing to the next thing or getting to the next. Okay, we got this. So what's next? Like we got to get there
Mhm.
now, because everything's got to be so fast instead of just sitting and enjoying what you prayed for, or sitting and seeing what you can learn from this waiting season, or maybe this season of injury, or a season where things are not looking like you had planned or it's not working out the way you had hoped. But we don't like to sit in being uncomfortable. We don't like to
Right,
like have those waiting seasons. And those waiting seasons are what mature us. It matures us and grows us in life, but it also matures us and grows us in our walk with God. Because if we don't have those seasons, we don't learn to trust Him, and we don't learn to trust that His timing is good and perfect and right. And so, although it's hard, I would just encourage people to, when you find yourself in that season, to be asking God, what can I learn from this? Like, what can I
right.
take away from this? What do you have for me in this? Help me get through this and just continue to surrender. And like I said, we're all human, and we have these desires of like wanting to move through and not be uncomfortable, or not feeling like, oh, someone's like passing us by and we're just back here. But it's all for a reason. And when we continue to remind ourselves that every time our head starts trying to get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah,
that is where we can get that peace and that strength from God to just wait with Him.
right. I also love the little line that you mentioned that was like, "Enjoy where you're at," because it's probably something you prayed for earlier, and I actually had a moment a couple days ago. I was literally sitting in a split, like, stretching at the beginning of practice, just thinking about, like, "Okay, gotta do this and that today. Oh, but my legs are sore, but, like, I gotta push through," and I kind of like, the negative starts coming in, and I literally had a moment of, like, pause. I prayed for so long to even be in this gym, like, to
Right.
be in college athletics and to get to be at an SEC school. I prayed for that for so long, and here I am sitting in a split on the floor on this team, and it totally shifted my perspective, but again, like, you start thinking ahead and the negatives pop in, and it's so easy to forget that you are probably somewhere that you once prayed to be, or you are in a season where, yes, there are always gonna be hard things, there's always gonna be maybe not ideal things, but there's another part of your life where you're like, "Oh, but God redeemed me there, and I prayed for that, and He totally did His work there," and remembering that is unlike our human flesh, our human brain doesn't want to remember that, but reminding ourselves constantly, like, totally changes your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I find myself having to do that being a mom. all the
Right.
time. You're like, oh, let's move through this season. Oh, let's move through
Right.
this. It's like, no, 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 no. Like these seasons go by so fast. Enjoy it, even though it's hard. But that's the thing. It's like whether you're a collegiate gymnast, whether you're a mom, whether you're, a business person, whatever you're doing, like you're just going to have these tough moments. But it's how we learn and grow and get
Yeah.
better. And we're strengthened for the next season.
Right. This is also a perfect segue into the next thing I wanna talk about because I was watching some interviews and videos and things, and you were kind of talking about how post-Olympics, it kind of brought you into, like, a dark place, and you were kind of in that waiting period or, like, season of, like,
Hmm.
"Wait, what's next? Like, what's my next passion? Where do I go next? Like, what do I do next? I've been doing gymnastics for 40 hours a week for the last
Right.
10 years, like, what's next?" So I would love for you to take us through that time and dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we've all gone through times like that, whether you're a high level athlete and, like you said, I was training 40 hours a week and that's all I knew for so long, or you're moving on from a season of high school to college or college to regular life, or you're switching careers. It's like this identity shift that we're having. And in that moment, it can be really hard because if you've known yourself just kind of by this one thing for so long, it can be hard. It can be scary. It can be nerve wracking to transition into that next season or that next career. And so that's where I found myself after officially retiring from gymnastics at 18 and trying to figure out what that next passion and path for my life was going to be. And it felt like it had to be something like gymnastics to me, since that's all I knew.
Right.
So I was kind of trying all these different paths and, starting college and doing classes, but I was also still really busy with just doing post-Olympic stuff. I was kind of chasing fame as well at that time, I would say, because the Olympic fame was dying down and it was very different from an Olympic moment today where you have the social media platforms to maybe kind of continue
Right.
success and continue making money and, staying out there and getting those opportunities. And so it was just so different back then that I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I keep staying on top of this? And what's that next thing? And it's got to be just as good or just as big or just as important as an Olympic gold medal. And so I was putting all this pressure on myself that everything I did had to live up to the gold medal. And if it didn't, it just was not good enough. And so that's a lot of pressure to carry and to have to put on yourself. And so I started a music career. I decided like that's the way I'm going to keep this,
Mhm.
fame and like whatever going. And I'd always loved singing. Like I said, my dad sings, he still sings in a band to this day, but I just never had the time to pursue anything else but gymnastics. So I was like, okay, well, like, let's try this. Let's see what happens. And I was working hard. I was doing all the things and writing and recording and, put out a whole CD and all this stuff. But at the same time was feeling so empty. Like was feeling like could not get satisfied from it, but like continued to chase because like I said, if it didn't end up in a Grammy, if it didn't end up in number one hits being played all over the radio and touring and filled stadiums, that it wasn't going to be good enough. So at the same time of knowing I was not being fulfilled by this is not actually what I wanted to do with my life. I was still chasing it simply for the fact that I felt like I was going to be a failure if I didn't achieve this certain goal or trophy or
Right.
award. And so once again, found myself having to kind of come to the end of myself and that self pride of trying to keep this going and say, okay, you know what, this is not for me. And that's okay. It took those moments to realize not everything I do in life has to look like an Olympic gold medal or like this certain picture of success. Success in that season, looking back, was that I tried something new. Success was that I was scared and nervous to put myself out there in this completely new, vulnerable way, but I still did it. Success looks like so many different things. And I had to realize that. And so when I realized I learned so much from trying this and going for it, but ultimately learned that that was not going to be the life path for me and that's
Right.
not what I wanted to do. And so, okay, time to move on, time to find that new identity, time to whatever. And so then I just started focusing on school and finishing that up and trying to figure out what I was going to do and started working on, speaking. And then I met my now husband. And so life just kind of kept moving and changing. And like I said, that faith aspect was starting to creep back in and realizing that my identity did not lie in what I did or what I accomplished or past accomplishments, that my identity only lies in Christ and he is only going to be my true fulfillment. And so that's when I kind of started realizing like all of these worldly things that I was chasing, that was never going to fill me up. I was always going to feel empty inside if I did not, once again, just kind of submit my will to God's plans for my life and say, okay, like I'm done trying to make my life look a certain way or have a certain kind of success. I'm giving my life back to you and your will, and you do what you want with it. And I know that that's going to be way better than any plans I could ever dream up. It's so funny how
Right.
we can think sometimes that our little brains can create something better than the creator,
Right.
And it's like, dummy.
Yeah. So true. I also think a huge part of what you're talking about is we feel like those accomplishments and achieving those goals and being at the top is like what makes us credible. Like that's what makes us relevant in the world. That's what, like you were saying, like makes us more important. But none of that stuff you can take to heaven, number one. Number two, like none of that makes you any better or worse in God's eyes. Like in his eyes, he looks at you as his perfect child. And he, first of all, already knows exactly what you're going to get and what you're not going to get, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And so none of those things make you credible in his eyes. It's only towards the world. And at that point, we're just people pleasing. Right. And that's not serving us well either. I know that's relatable for me and relatable for a lot of athletes, even just when they think about why do I do this sport? Why am I on this team? Well, because it makes them credible.
But then what happens when that goes away? When you don't have that to say anymore, it's like, where does your identity lie now? Like, and without this next to you. And so it's just, you will always feel that emptiness and that burning for something more until you know who you're living for.
Right.
And who brings true fulfillment to your life.
Right. So good. Okay, I'd love to shift gears just a little bit as we wrap up. I saw you speaking, you were giving a message about abiding in God, and you specifically mentioned the topic of comparison. And comparison is something that we all deal with, right? But especially in the gymnastics world, whether it's she looks like that, I don't look like that, or how did she get that skill so fast? Why is it taking me so long? Why is she good at that event and I'm good at this event? It's constant. But I would
Yeah.
love for you to just like dive into that and what God has taught you about comparison.
Yeah. Comparison is something that we deal with so much today. Like every single person, nobody can get away from that comparison trap these days. And that's why it's so important to have that close relationship with God, because it's so easy to fall prey to that in our day and age. And like you said, comparing anything, I don't look like that. My career doesn't look like that. Or I want, that. And most of the things are tweaked and filtered and this and that. And so then we're totally forgetting that we're even trying to maybe strive for an unattainable look or an unattainable career or like just something that is just not even real.
Right.
And, I've absolutely had that. I still struggle with that. And that's why I say I have to be, and anybody, should be so close to Christ to help with that, because God made us perfectly and wonderfully. And I was literally just telling my kids this last night because I'm reading this Tim Tebow book to my son, my 8-year-old.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's been such a great and encouraging book. But he was talking about comparison too. And us athletes can really easily fall prey to that comparison every day. He was just talking about how God made us all unique, and he gave us all these unique abilities and talents and gifts, and that we shouldn't strive to be like somebody else because God has a different plan for them. God gave them different talents and gifts. And so God put all of these things in us that are unique to us. And so to remember that God knit us together in our mother's womb, and he knew every single day. Like you said, he already knew the plans before,
Mhm.
the plans have unfolded. And so to just rest in knowing that. And once again, going back to God created me. He's the best creator there is. Why would I try and trump that? Because I will fail miserably if I try to think that I am better than the creator that created me. And so yeah, just even like reminding my kids that now at such a young age, we can build on that, and knowing that, we live in such a society of comparison and feeling like, oh, we're not good enough. We don't have enough. What are my gifts? And it's like, no, you have gifts. You have talents. You are special. God made us all different for a reason, and we should not try to strive for something like that. We just have to keep walking our path, and
Right.
not look to the left, not look to the right and what that person may have or have accomplished. Just stay focused on our own path and walking it with God and submitting those comparison traps every day.
Right. And it's literally, I mean, just relating this to gymnastics, it is like being on the beam. Because
Yes.
if you are on the beam and
Choose the
you
narrow path.
yes, and you are looking at the beam, you're looking at the end of the beam, like that's your focus, you're more than likely gonna stay on the beam. But the second that you are, finishing a skill and you look to the right, you look to the left, you look at the ground,
You're
or I
going to end
mean,
up on the ground.
exactly, we say that all the time in gymnastics, like where
Yeah.
you look is where you're gonna go.
Yep.
So,
That's right.
I mean, just
Let's look
relating
up.
that to what we're talking about, it's hard. It's not easy because walking on a 4-inch piece of wood is hard. But the more that we are disciplined with that, we're focused and we keep our eyes on that, much like keeping our eyes on the Lord, we're following that path that He has for us and we're not getting distracted and being led astray, being led to fall.
That's right. Love it. So good.
Okay, Carly, this has been so great. I would love to just finish up by asking you what your final piece of advice is for a young athlete who is trying to navigate their sport and their faith.
I was thinking about this last night and I wrote it down, but I don't have it in front of me. But it basically kind of goes back to what we were talking about when we're in that tough season, either waiting or injury, or just maybe, the skill, the routine, whatever is not coming in the timing you would like it to, or maybe you didn't get to that next level yet, whatever it may be. But don't rob yourself of tomorrow's strength by being afraid of today's struggle. Just keep asking God to help you get through it well and to help you keep your eyes on Him through it so He can strengthen you through it to get through it. Because when we try and do things, obviously, in our own strength, it doesn't go well. So just knowing that we have God on our side through all these seasons and these moments in life, and it's going to happen in gymnastics, it's going to happen in your everyday life after gymnastics. And so just knowing, don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of things not coming, not happening, because, as a gymnast, we fail so much more than we do it successfully, right? And each time we fail, we learn from that failure. We learn, oh gosh, I set way to the left. Like, I know what that feels like now. I'm going to correct it on the next one. Or I went straight back, like that shot me back. Like I need to go more up. So like each failure we have, it just helps us know, what our body's supposed to feel like, what that moment is supposed to feel like and look like. And we can make those corrections and those changes by making the mistakes that we make. So don't shy away from the mistakes. Don't shy away from the failures. See what you can learn from them and see how you can grow and get better through them, and just keep God on your side to help you get through
Yeah.
them, because it'll work out much better that way.
Amen to that. And also just inviting him into those failures makes such a big difference. I encourage any young athlete who is like, okay, I understand failures can help me and I understand that God has a plan, but how do I make those things combine, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, next time you have that failure or you have that bad day, ask God, "Hey, God, I really need you to help me and help my body to do this better." Or, "Can you help give me more confidence?" Like, "Help me have a more positive mindset." Like, those types of
Yeah.
things are how you combine the 2, and that's why I love how you just talked on both of those things because that's ultimately how we draw closer to God, but also then how we're gonna be able to glorify Him better through the flips that we're doing, right?
Right,
And the gift
right.
that He's given us.
Yeah. A friend of mine from Bible study said this one time, and I love it and I've always remembered it. But she said, God will move where you invite him in. And I mean, obviously, God's going to work and move no matter what. But I think when we choose to allow him in and invite him to work, when we ask for that, I think that's when it just takes it to a whole new level. And our eyes will be able to be open to seeing what he's doing. And it will just help us in general.
Right. And at the end of the day, he's your father, right? And if you think about your own dad, he's always going to be your dad. He's always going to be willing to help. But when you invite him, like, hey, dad, I have a flat tire and I need your help, guess how much easier that's gonna,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
get done because you
Yeah.
invited him to come help you, and then
Right.
it grows your relationship and the tires fix, and everything is so much
Everything's
better,
good. Yeah.
right? But seriously, like,
Exactly.
he shows us that in the real world, so why would we not also invite him into all of the things we do, even if we can't, like, directly see him?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on Beam Boldly, Carly. This has been amazing.
Thanks for having me, Brooke. I loved our conversation. So fun.
Yes, this was so fun. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Beam Boldly. Make sure that you like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so that you can continue on this journey with me. Thank you guys. Bye.